everybody. Excuse me. Keith Engel here for TGI Sports Talk's College Sports Huddle, led off by football still. Great to have you with us tonight. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. We're heading into bowl season in football. We're going to talk the playoff. We're going to talk the bowl games that will be played here in the next week or so. We'll talk some coaching news. We'll talk some Heisman news. We'll talk transfer portal news, some other stuff in college football. We'll start our pivot. We'll start our pivot into college basketball as well. We haven't really touched on it because of the busyness of the college football season, but we'll get into some college basketball, look at the rankings, talk about some of the big games this week. Some early surprises, maybe disappointments. Juwan Howard in trouble again. But we'll get into all the football and as much basketball as we can, depending on you and the comments and topics and hot takes you bring to the show. Feel free to do that. Welcome, everybody watching us today on TGI Sports Talk, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. Welcome, everybody, on Let's Talk Sports on YouTube. Great shows over there. And welcome, everybody, on Northeast Streaming Sports. We're live on Facebook and YouTube there. And also will be this show will be replayed on the Roku, the Northeast Streaming Sports Roku channel on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. So make sure you get that downloaded, guys. Great stuff. And a quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media, specifically his Sports Corner show he does with Smokin' Jim Frazier on WBVP 1230 a.m., 99.3 FM there in Pittsburgh. Ralph does some other great shows as well. Sports and non-sports shows there in Pittsburgh. So check him out. Pretty much daily he's got stuff on as well. So welcome everybody and thumbs up, DDH. Good to have you following us from the heavens as always. Guys, we'll get into everything tonight. We'll talk a little bit more of the playoff. Who we got here with us? John DeLon's with us early tonight. Good evening, John DeLon, the first one in the room, the first one to comment. Haven't got John's feedback yet on the playoff, the final playoff rankings, if you will. FSU, it's still in my mind, getting screwed, for lack of a better term. 13-0 in a power conference. You can say it's weak. You can say what you want, but it's never happened ever in the history of this 4-team playoff. Now, I know that's only 9 years, but it's never happened. You never have seen an undefeated team from power conference champion be left out for a one-loss team. And by the way, I'm not saying Alabama should have been left out. I still am saying, and will continue to say, they didn't want the individual comparison of Alabama and Texas. Now, I've also heard rumors, and for good reason, because they didn't want to take Alabama and say, well, the game that Texas lost to Alabama, or beat Alabama, in September is meaningless. And they didn't want to take Texas and leave Alabama out. And Alabama's a better team right now. And I'm not saying Alabama's not a better team than Florida State right now, but it depends on your interpretation. Who should play? The most deserving teams or the best teams? I think the most deserving teams should have a shot to play for a champion. And that's why, John DeLon, we need more than 4 teams in this playoff. And by the way, there are some rumors about what went on. And again, one thing I hate, and I'll get to your comments here in a second. I see something starting to come in from John and some others. One thing I hate about this whole committee is the non-transparency or lack of transparency that they show. You don't see the distance between 2 teams. We don't know, for instance, that it's coming out today that I read, maybe it was earlier than today, that Georgia originally was ranked ahead of Florida State as well. They were ranked 5th. And then they decided they didn't want to deal with that, so they re-ranked. So, and what I want to know, what was the difference, or how far was Florida State behind Alabama and Texas, let's say? How far behind was SMU to Liberty for that New Year's Day 6 shot for the the Group of 5 conferences? No transparency here at all. How far ahead was Michigan of Washington? It all matters. There's no transparency in that room at all. So, CA is with us, giving a thumbs up to DDH. We like to see that. Did I hear Malik Murphy is entering the portal? Probably everybody's entering the portal, aren't they? How many quarterbacks are in the portal? We're gonna talk about that at some point tonight anyway. You've already got Dylan Gabriel leaving Oklahoma, going to Oregon, supposedly getting north of $1 million. Matt Rule said it's going to cost $1 to $2 million to bring a quarterback in through the transfer portal. We got Van Dyke leaving Miami to go to Wisconsin. Possibly McCord leaving. He is leaving Ohio State, maybe going to Nebraska. Will Howard is gone from Kansas State. Some bigger name quarterbacks. Somebody else went. Oh, Riley Leonard has gone to Notre Dame. Somebody else, too, I just saw before the show. Now I can't remember who the heck it was. Malik Murphy. I think there's if I'm not mistaken, there's 40 quarterbacks in the transfer portal right now. Some have already moved, and so a lot of them are going to move. I saw a stat that six of the top seven or seven of the top eight ranked quarterbacks this year were transfer quarterbacks at one point here. Good evening, Augustin. How are you? Your Oregon team will get a chance to play Liberty in the postseason. Some think that'll be a blowout. I'm not quite so sure. As far as I know, Bo Nix is playing. Another topic that will come up tonight too is, the proliferation of stars not playing. Sam Hartman's begged out already. Several of the FSU wide receivers are not playing against Georgia and whatnot. I'm sure we get into some of John's comments here pretty soon. Oh, please. I knew we'd get here. The committee saved us from a 30-point blowout. I don't care. I really don't care about the score of what it would have been, John. I really don't. It's irrelevant to me. Again, is it the committee's job? And we don't know, because I think it's a little, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the one who's obtuse here. But I still don't know whether their obligation is to put the four best teams in or the teams that are most deserving. I still don't know. And I don't know that they saved us from a 30-point blowout. We don't know that. I watch teams better than this Florida State team go and get blown up by 30 points, or teams we thought were going to get blown up by 30 points win by big scores. I thought Florida State showed great resiliency winning 2 games without their star quarterback, their best player on their team. We don't give them any points for that. You, John DeLon, want this not to be a championship trophy tournament. Then the teams that are undefeated are the teams that should be going, not the teams that have lost. Just by your own comments in the past. Sorry, I'm already a little worked up, apparently. Let me shut this music down. It's still playing. Sorry about that. Oh, hello again, Augustine. Good to have you with us. I'm really sick of all the bleeding hearts. I'm not a bleeding heart. I'm not a bleeding heart. I'm a freaking realist. Grow the bleep up. Oh, so I need to grow up. The committee made the correct decision. Again, John, your opinion's your opinion, and you're entitled to it. I knew you'd have that one. My opinion is not without merit. I'm sorry. Again, name one other time they have overlooked an undefeated power conference champion. Name me one time since they've been picking 4 teams. Not once. Your own argument about the 12-team tournament is that teams with too many losses would make it. If I've only got 4 spots and I've got 4 undefeated teams, well, I only had 3 that are worthy. How am I taking teams that lost games ahead of them? Use your own. Listen, that's your argument. That's not mine. I'm just saying, if this was the NFL and your team you win your division, your quarterback gets hurt in the last week, you don't get told you can't go to the playoffs. Stupid. That's not to say Alabama's not deserving. That's not to say Texas isn't deserving. And I will tell you, you think FSU got left out to save us from a 30-point blowout. I will tell you that I believe wholeheartedly they were left out because they did not want to look at Texas and Alabama head-to-head and leave one of them out. That's why. No other reason. Just saying. Augustine's great. Good to know. On 3 is reporting that McCord isn't going to Nebraska, but On 3 has had a lot of misses lately. They're the John Hyman of, if you don't know John Hyman, he's a baseball reporter here in well, he does nationwide, but I think he's based out of New York still. And he's terrible. It's all conjecture, right? Let's expand the... what is that? What is that? Where's the rest of that comment? Did I see the Louisville game? I did. I saw a team that battled. Again, Louisville was ranked 14th, John. Again, I know they lost to a bad Pittsburgh team. This isn't like they lost to the Little Sisters of the Poor. This team was ranked 14th in the country. They beat your LSU team. Again, not a very good team this year, especially on defense. And congratulations, by the way, to your Jalen Daniels for winning the Heisman. I guess I'm okay with that pick. Again, if our criteria is just, which it has become, this isn't a shot at Jalen Daniels. It's just become who's got the most gaudy numbers. Was he the best player? Probably. I think the best player in the country is Marvin Harrison, but didn't get a chance to probably show it as much. Anyway, again, Louisville's ranked 14th. I saw a team that found a way to win without their top 2 quarterbacks, not their top quarterback, their top 2, but they get no points for that. Texas gets tons of top style points for rolling up the score over a bad Oklahoma State team. Well, not a great Oklahoma State team. Louisville's better than Oklahoma State. No? Now, Alabama's got the best win. We talk about the best win a lot. A lot of the year, FSU had the best win for much of the year. It was that went over LSU. Then it was Texas against Alabama, and that win looked better and better, but the team wasn't any good when they beat them. So they get penalized for that. Alabama's got the best win of the year. We know that, beating a obviously top-ranked Georgia team, who I had predicted would make the playoff and beat Alabama. So this isn't an anti-SEC rant. I'm sitting here trying to use common sense, which is why this 14 playoff doesn't work. I mean, I'm willing to go to. I saw an article today that was trumpeting going to the 2014 playoff that the FCS uses. I don't want that. And by the way, in a 12-team playoff this year, John, nobody would have had more than 2 losses. Just an FYI. Next year, Oregon is going to the Big 12. Now, Oregon is going to the Big 10 next year, Augustine. They'll be in the Big 10 playing with Michigan and Ohio State and those big boys. We'll see what happens there. That brings up a great point. I think, Washington, Oregon, they're probably set up to do it. Washington, who knows? Oregon, I think, is set up to compete okay. The team that I really think coming into the Big 10 next year that's going to be in for a rude awakening is UCLA. I don't think in any way, shape, or form is UCLA ready for this move. None. Let's expand the playoffs to where they really should be handling out. Stop with the participation trophies to fix a problem that pops up every 25 years. 25 years, really. It's been 25 years since we have had any debate. 25 years. Right? We don't remember Ohio State jumping like 3 teams a couple of years ago. Again, I'm having trouble coming up with examples now, but I know for damn well we've had a lot more controversies than just one in 25 years. You want to point, if that's 0.25, but I think that's a mark on my screen. Will you stop with your, listen. Jen, I love debating with you. I really do. But please get the L word out of your mouth when you're talking to me. Because there's no more conservative guy, especially, I can tell you in New York State, which maybe isn't saying much to a guy like you, than me. I use common sense. You can sit there and use your, whatever it is that you use to make these decisions. I use common sense. You say participation trophies. I say teams that lost don't get in over teams that don't lose. That's a participation trophy more so than anything else. And I'm not saying they don't belong. And again, in the solution I have, everybody would be a champion plus the 6 best teams. So if you let 10 teams, that have won conference championships in, you got all champions. So how is that a participation trophy? I don't think you really know what participation trophy means. That means you get a trophy just for showing up. Just for showing up. And by the way, I've got plenty of people that have worked me through the years that have felt they should get a participation trophy just for showing up. And I show them the door. Get a little worked up over being called a liberal. Anyway, we'll get it here. I'm very conservative. Being a conservative doesn't mean you forego common sense, unless you just think Donald Trump walks on water, which I do not. You mean Nikki Haley any day of the week? Anybody but M. Night Shyamalan. We won't get into politics tonight. Maybe next season, here, tell it. Harrison Jr. offered. I don't think anybody's paying $10 million for Harrison to stay. I did hear he's going to stay. I did hear he's offered a lot of money. In fact, I heard $20 million even. CA. I don't think anybody's coughing up that kind of money for one player in a college program. Because again, think what you could do with that money throughout the program to make it better. And remember, his decision may also come down to whether they bring in a quarterback in the transfer portal because McCord's gone and they're going to have to start over at quarterback. He may not want to come out or stay, rather. He may come out for that reason. So I don't know what the deadline is for the draft. I know Drake has declared. And I've said for a long time, Harrison comes out, there's going to be a lot of guys who pick one of these quarterbacks and is going to be very disappointed they didn't take Marvin Harrison Jr. In fact, as a Patriot fan, I'd go out and trade for one of the guys that's going to be available. Like Josh Fields is likely going to be available, and then pick at the 2, 3, or 4 spot wherever they're picking Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what I would do. But again, that's pro football. Yes, no, you got the wrong number though. You got the Big Ten. Augustine, admit it. You're angry just that the SEC is going to their 5th straight. No, I'm not. I'm not angry about who wins. I don't look at these 4 teams I'm okay with the 4 teams that are playing. That doesn't mean I can't also have the opinion that FSU got royally screwed. What else are you supposed to do to win a national championship or get a chance to play for a national championship? Win all your games. That's all you can do. They're one of 3 teams from power conferences that did that. And at the end of the day, they're going to the Orange Bowl to play Georgia. And by the way, my opinion will not change one iota based on what happens with Georgia against FSU. If FSU gets their clock cleaned, I'm not changing my opinion any more than people should change their opinion if they go out there and beat Georgia. Just me. Oh, God. Well, again, John, I mentioned, and you probably heard me, the rumors are now that And again, here's my problem. Where's the transparency with this committee? I hate it. You don't know where they rank these teams and how far ahead they are of one another. The rumors are now that originally they had Georgia ranked 5. And just because they didn't want to deal with that fallout, they changed the vote. They changed the vote and put FSU 5 and Georgia 6 because they didn't want to deal with the fact that they put a non-conference champion ahead of FSU. And again, I will tell you this, John. If you think Georgia belongs more than FSU, then you believe in participation trophies far more than somebody like me. And I'm not going to throw the L word at you because I know you're not that. Everybody doesn't have to think alike to not be one thing or be another. But if you think a team that didn't even win their conference championship should be in and have a chance to play for a national championship more than a team that did, then I would say you would suffer from participation trophy syndrome far more than I. Well, I thought you did, so I'll take that as not an apology. I'll apologize to you for thinking you called me a liberal. When I'm spouting an opinion that you're calling liberal, I mean, I guess I think I'm being called liberal. The situation, again, I don't think the situation I was calling for was liberal. Maybe so, whatever. I mean, it's football, for Christ's sakes. Again, I would say you putting Georgia ahead of Florida is a far more liberal solution than the one I proposed. Just saying. Well, in a way, John, we're on the same page here then, because I have a hard time, which is why I want more than 4 teams, Jen. Exactly. This is exactly my argument at why I wanted more than 4 teams. And you're actually backing that argument when you say FSU got screwed, but the decision was correct. I'm okay with the 4 teams that got in. I'm just not okay with FSU getting screwed. So, again, I mean, I'm pretty sure we're probably closer, and I like to run with the when I get a little antagonistic, I have fun. We probably agree. You and I probably agree on far more things than we disagree. Because I'm thinking that your SEC bias does skew your opinion a little bit. I think you have to admit that. Right? I don't have any allegiance to Florida State. And I don't have any gripe with the SEC. Hell, I picked Georgia to win. I should be, if we're going to go just by, your preconceived notions, then I should think, oh, yeah, I would put Georgia in there over FSU. I'd put them in there over Alabama. I'd put them in there over Texas. I'd put them in there over whatever. Fact is, you need to win games to make your way forward. So you got a bunch of good teams that won't get a chance to play. I think a 12-team playoff this year, and I know, John, this is probably going to rattle you. I think a 12-team playoff this year would have been a really good. I think they would have had to change the order up a little bit, right? Because I don't like some of the matchups. There's a lot of repeat matchups, a lot of conferences playing. Let's go into here. A lot of conferences playing each other, but this would have been a great year for a 12-team playoff because you would have had FSU get in, so they had a chance to at least play for a title. Like I say, they got screwed out of. You would have had a good Oregon team who lost twice to an undefeated team in their conferences, and it's a really good team. You would have had Georgia, the defending champion, with a chance to get in. You would have had Ohio State with 1 loss in. You would have had a couple more SEC teams in, John. You would have had Ole Miss and Missouri in. I think it would have been very competitive. And you would have had, I think, the way the final rankings at least worked out. And again, I do think they would have manipulated them differently because the matchups would have brought too many. I think Georgia was going to play Ole Miss and would have played Ole Miss the way they finished now. But Liberty would have played FSU with a real chance to win, actually, again, based on what we know. Liberty's got a good football team. Do I think they can go out and beat the SEC? No. Any given Sunday or Saturday? Yeah, maybe. They're not getting beat 100 times if they play 100 times. But this would have been the year to have it, to start it. Georgia won 29 out of 30 games. Absolutely right. With their only loss being at the hands of the greatest coach ever, which I certainly agree with, by 3 freaking points. And letting into the playoffs would have been a participation trophy. John, I'm only going by your, what do you consider a participation trophy? If teams that have won conference championships are left out of the chance to win for teams that did not, I'm not saying it would have been. I'm saying by your definition, I don't think the tournament with 12 teams or even a 16-team version that I propose with all the conference winners and 6 at-large teams, I do not think in any way, shape, or form is a participation trophy. So you can take you can take the implication that I think that would be a participation trophy out of the equation. I'm saying by your own comments earlier this year about the 12-team playoff, Georgia would be gifted a spot to play for a championship. They don't deserve it based on, I agree. Everything you said, they do agree. I agree they should be able to play. But you pointed out earlier, and I don't know what your criteria for a participation trophy would be, but you said basically, if I let 12, we have a 12-team playoff, it's a glorified participation trophy tournament. I don't think so. There's 12 deserving teams out there to play for a national championship. There's nobody with 3 losses. I don't think there's anybody with a horrible loss on their resume. I mean, Ole Miss, who would have been 12, maybe the last seed, lost to who? Georgia and Alabama. Okay, maybe not great showings. I'm not saying it is a participation trophy. I'm only using your argument to ask you the question. No, I do not think that. I love this show. I love when John's here the whole show. When John shows up, when you show up, John, with 10 minutes, man, I'm wasted. Not wasted, not literally wasted. But I'm tired and worn out, and my voice is gone, and I've already, used up all my best ammunition. Tonight, you're giving me lots of ammunition. It's stuff you've thrown at me, the previous, 4 months here, 3 months, 3.5 months, whatever it is. Right? Am I wrong? You're free to tell me I'm wrong, John. Oh, there was another quarterback that signed somewhere today. By the way, a couple other topics. Some of the transfer portal guys. Who's going to make the most difference? And should these guys continue to be able to move just willy-nilly? I've lost my passion to get angry about this transfer portal because of what coaches do and what the programs, the universities themselves have done, as far as just pulling up roots of 100-year-old traditions and just moving for the money. So I don't know why I should really get mad at players for doing so. Is there a quarterback right now that has moved that you think will have a difference next year? Whether it's Dylan Gabriel going to Oregon, I'm sure that Augustin thinks that'll be the big one. Riley Leonard going to Notre Dame. If he stays healthy, Sam Hartman didn't work out this year. Riley Leonard can run the football as well as throw, but he needs to work on his accuracy. Van Dyke going to Wisconsin, played his best ball in the air raid format that Longo loves up there as the offensive coordinator. Who else has moved? Dylan McCall. I'm sorry, is it Dylan McCall? What's his name? Dylan McCall. Grayson McCall. I know he had a cool name. Moved to North Carolina State. I think that's a huge move for North Carolina State. Anyway, I got a couple of comments here from John. Let me make sure. Okay. So let me get this straight. John says Liberty has a shot against FSU, but you're crying a river over FSU not getting in. I'm just saying Liberty has a shot over anybody in a 12 game, in a 1 game playoff. Anybody could win in that 12 team scenario. And I say, yeah, they'd have a better shot over SFU because of the quarterback situation. That really has nothing to do with whether FSU deserved to get into 14 playoff or not. Again, I just said to you, the result of the Georgia game is not going to change my opinion about whether Georgia should have or FSU should have been in or not either. If they go out and get beat by 40 against Georgia, it doesn't change my opinion one bit. If you deserve to play for a championship and you go out and get hammered, you got hammered. That's all. How many times I watched Notre Dame get hammered? It isn't contradictory at all. I've told you again, when I'm telling you the result of the Georgia game doesn't matter to me. So I talk about hypotheticals in a 12-team playoff. By the way, Liberty's a really good football team. Have you seen them play this year, John? I have. I'm not telling you they would compete and be a winning team in the SEC. There's some teams in the SEC that this team would beat. They got a great coach. Chadwell's one of the great coaches and up and coming coaches in the country. I've watched this team play twice this year. And listen, it's not a bad football team. I know we don't play good football outside the SEC. I know there's no football worth being played outside the SEC, but never said Georgia deserved to be in this 14 playoff. I said they were more deserving than Florida State. Well, okay, well, that's fair. Again, that's all I was talking about, though, I think. No, you're right. I did say in the playoff. But again, to say that, I still think that you're kind of trying to spin your way out of this, John, but it's not working because, again, Florida State is more deserving than Florida. I'm sorry, Florida State is more deserving than Georgia based on the criteria of, again, Georgia didn't win a championship. Florida State did. Power conference. You can say the leagues are not even, but again, until they change designations and we got one big league, which we'll probably have anyway within the next 10 years. We're not going to agree on this topic. I know we're not. I don't think I'm contradictory at all, though. Again, Florida State belongs in. Doesn't mean I'm not saying they wouldn't go in and get killed. I didn't say that. I'm just saying they deserve the chance to go in and get beat by that much if that's what happened. But they deserve a chance to win. A chance to win a championship. So, I don't know. Who's going to be the quarterback for LSU next year, John? And here I give you credit. Jalen Daniels winning the Heisman. You haven't commented even once yet. Extended highlights of Liberty is not the same as watching an entire game, by the way. Again, that's been the history, right? We saw it with Cincinnati. The line play was what really set them apart from when they played Alabama. But I will tell you again that on any given Sunday, they could go and win. Oh, again, they played 90. If they played 100 times, they'd probably only lose 98 times. They might win twice. or maybe more. It's a good football team. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, again, I just said they couldn't compete in the SEC on a regular basis. I'm saying on a given Saturday or Monday, whenever we're playing these playoff games, yeah, they could go out and shock the world. Did anybody think TCU was going to be Michigan last year? Did anybody think the Miami Hurricanes would beat Nebraska in 1982? Might have the year wrong. Clemson would beat Nebraska in 1980? Might have the year wrong. Trying to think of some other teams that were apparently outclassed by a great margin that won championships in the cases I just mentioned. The committee has said that they reserve the right to consider, and I get that. I understand they said that. I don't have to agree with it. I think it's ridiculous. Considering injuries is fine. This team was more than their quarterback. Again, they struggled, yes, against Kentucky. Who they played trying to remember who they played in the game before the championship game. Who they played in the game before the championship game? They struggled against LSU, but they found a way to win. It's a really good defense, by the way. That's a very good defense, which your LSU team found out about in the second half of their game. And again, I know that game was played in September, so it doesn't matter. We aren't allowed to consider games. That's the other thing that ticks me off here. I kept hearing the narrative when we're talking about Texas and Alabama, that the game Texas beat Alabama was irrelevant because it was played so long ago, and Alabama's a different team. Well, then why schedule the games if they're not going to matter 3 months from there? It's a ridiculous narrative. Yes, Alabama's better. Agreed. Texas played them at a different time of the year. They shouldn't be penalized. By the way, I'll say this too, and John, we do agree on one thing. Greatest coach in the history of college football is Nick Saban. I say that all the time here. I think you've heard me. Greatest coach in the history of college football. This may be, and I'd like your opinion here as an SEC elitist and expert. I think this was Nick Saban's best coaching job. Best. Given the way they started, the loss to Texas, the near disaster to South Florida, the quarterback situation, and probably him sitting Milroe in that game against South Florida was the best thing that happened to Milroe. He certainly came back a different player and got better pretty much every week. And a lot of that comes down to coaching. And this guy is head and shoulders above everybody not named Kirby Smart, probably. And he's ahead of Kirby Smart. Well, all you have to do to come up with enough money to be the new sponsor of this. Hughes triumphant music. I wish I had some. Well, that's not it. I got something here. Hold on. Oh, that's not it either. That's more like what we hear when. Oops. This is what we hear when the committee gets together. Oh, that's not it. We hear this music every time the committee gets together. How many times did I push the goddamn button? I'm going to turn the sound down a second. All right, I'm not going to listen anymore. I'm waiting for the light to go off and play the real music. Thanks, Jen. You got me playing with my soundboard and I screwed it all up. It's still playing. By the way, if I had the money, John, I would not waste it on sponsoring the college football playoff. I'm just saying. That money would go into my retirement fund. I would be traveling the world, doing the show from the deck of cruise ships, from the deck of, I don't know, from wherever. Beautiful beaches in Hawaii, Alaska. I'd be doing it from all over this country and a couple of foreign countries. That damn thing is still playing. I'm not even sure if you guys can hear me when I turn that off, though. That's the problem. I don't think I can turn that off. Can I? Can you guys hear? Oh, you can. Okay. That's not my microphone. I had some brilliant comments there. I was hoping they weren't lost. Oh, Jesus. John, tell me about, do you agree with me, by the way, about Nick Saban's greatest coaching job this year? I think it is. Oh, my God. We got the coaching carousel all filled up now. Oh, let's see what's going on. I know I got this here somewhere. Coaches, let's just take a quick look at, I think we got 2 jobs left open. Get back here. 2 jobs left open, I believe. By the way, DJ, we were talking about the transfer portal, and DJ U up in Oregon State's back in it again for the second year in a row. Dylan Gabriel's back in it for the second year in a row. As I said, I don't know whether I like it. I've changed my opinion a little because of other circumstances. At what age, John? Not this, the age she is now, which probably is okay. I like that comment. How many clones? Well, hold on. Actually, now I got a question for you, John. I find it interesting you haven't answered my Nick Saban question, but we've got Salma Hayek on the show. So these clones are going to be all for you, or you're going to sell them, or what are you going to do? Because selling them in the context that we're talking about here seems problematic for your continued freedom. Or if they're all for you, I would think that's okay. Although I'm not sure how old you are. You might need some vitamins. CA, hopefully we see a rematch of Texas and Alabama. Is that what we want? Great point. Let's get to the games themselves. I know we got a lot of time to talk about them. Here's my early predictions. I liked Michigan up until a few weeks ago. Their offense has gone in the toilet in my mind. They can run the football, but they're not going to run the football with as much success against Alabama as they have against other teams in the Big Ten. They just aren't. J.J. McCarthy has not played that well in the last month of the season, 3-4 weeks of the season. Harbaugh's teams have come up short before. So, again, I'm not saying Harbaugh's a bad coach. I kind of like Jim Harbaugh as a football coach. Whether you like him as a person is a different story. But Alabama gets the coaching edge for sure. And I think Milroe has gotten good enough to make enough big plays against that Michigan defense, which is very good, by the way. I think this would be a low-scoring affair. I think Alabama will win that game. So that brings us to Washington and Texas. Washington, I think, has the most potential explosiveness on both sides of the ball. They can score a lot of points and they can give up a lot of points. The best bet to make in this Texas Washington game probably is going to be the over. Be shocked if it wasn't 70. And I'm going to pick Washington only because they've been so resilient all year. That defense, which is not that good, has found a way to make enough plays, as they did against Oregon twice. They made just enough plays to win. They've had games where they had to kind of white knuckle it out. So is Texas. I like to coach a little bit more on the Washington side than I do on the Texas side, and I'm going to go Washington. So I like Washington and Alabama, and I'm going to stay on the Washington bandwagon and say Washington wins the national championship. I think they got the highest ceiling, and I think they could probably get blown out. Maybe it's possible because that defense could absolutely fall apart. I don't see it happening though. I think Washington wins. I know John won't agree with that. Your intention would be to rule the world with my army of Salma Hayek clones. I know we're off topic here, and this is more for the Sunday Stream of Consciousness, John, but I have to continue my line of questioning. The way you would rule the world sounds like the plot to a bad porn movie. I don't know. I'm assuming you would keep a couple Salmas for yourself. And what age are these Salma Hayek clones? Are they now? Are they 20 years ago? A mixture. John's kind of conflicted on this being Nick's best coaching job. Back to some college talk. It depends on what his intentions were when he benched Milroe. That's a good point. That's a fair point. So you're conflicted. You're not sure whether he benched him to give him a chance to catch a breath, watch the game. You think he thought Buckner was a better quarterback? Because I just can't. I'm having a hard time buying that one. I get your point, though. I mean, if his intention was not to help the kid learn and get better, then, we have to discount that a little bit and maybe apply it to a little bit of luck. But it takes luck to be a great coach, and it takes luck to be a great team in a lot of ways. Well, luck is a residue of good design, yes, but luck is also a factor in these a lot of times. So, but that's a fair comment, I think, John, and I like that. I think that's good analysis. I really do. If he's trying to get Merrill's attention, which I just said, it was a great coaching move. If he thought Buckner was the answer, then it wasn't. Pretty much what I just said. And that's very perceptive analysis, I think. So it does come down to that in a lot of ways, right? I mean, again, the rest of the team improved as well. In all fairness, this wasn't just Milroe getting better. I mean, that was a big factor in this team's run to the ACC, the SEC championship. But the rest of the team got better too. And I guess one of the reasons I say this is his best job, it's not just Milroe. This isn't a classic Alabama I did it again, SEC championship team. I mean, there's a lot of holes on his team. The secondary has some issues. The wide receiver core has some issues, or at least did earlier in the year. And they all got better. All of those units got better, I think, through the course of the year. Now, that's also speaks to the position coaches, right? But that also, their success speaks to the head coach's success. So I'm just saying. It would be a mix of Salma's. Okay, 25 to the present. She's holding up okay, for sure. So, John, you brought a ton to the show today. You brought controversy. You brought argument. You brought thoughtfulness and sex. Great job. I mean, what more can I ask for in a podcast than that? You brought it all. You are the total package, John. Total package. I'd love to know about any of these. I'm going to go run through the coaching changes really quickly here because we haven't had a chance with our full audience. And by the way, next week's show, I didn't say it at the top, is going to have to be live on Saturday morning again on all the affiliates. I have a Christmas outing to go to, unfortunately. So we're not going to be able to do the show Wednesday night. So it'll air live. We'll do it live Saturday morning on all of these stations. That's the time it usually replays on Roku. You are a storm of controversy, John. That's why I love you being on the show. You are welcome, John. As much as I get into it, and I say this with a lot of people. Well, I actually don't say this to a lot of people. but you're a pleasure, and I like getting into it with you. It's good for the show. It's good for me. Maybe not great for my psyche, because there's times you do beat me in an argument, and I know that. Maybe I don't admit it sometimes. You didn't tonight, but there are times you do win arguments over me. We can talk about anything you want. We can keep talking about this stuff all night if you want. Let's take a quick look at the coaching carousel real quick. Mike Elko, as we know, is in at Texas A&M for the fired Jimbo Fisher. Out at Duke. Manny Diaz takes his place at Duke. I think Duke comes out the loser here. Elko's a really good coach. I like the way that Indiana went, quite honestly, hiring Kurt Cignetti from James Madison. He's a guy who's going to stick around. He's a guy who might revive that program a little bit. It's going to be very tough for the Indianas and the Illinois and the Purdue's and the Minnesotas of the Big Ten with expansion. But I think this is a good move for Indiana. I would have gone that way if I'm Duke. I want somebody who's going to come there and stay. You hire young guys. Manny's going to take the next big job that comes up if he has some success at Duke. If he has any modicum of success, he's going to look for the next job. I guarantee you. I like what Indiana did, and there's a couple other moves here that are very similar. Jonathan Smith going to Michigan State to replace Mel Tucker. I think it's a good hire by Michigan State, but they need somebody to come in there and change the entire culture. There's some talk that DJ might follow his old coach, Jonathan Smith, to Michigan State. We'll see whether that happens or not. But I think a good hire here. Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State. Good hire. Mississippi State, not a great place to go and win a bunch of games, but I think Mississippi State had liked this type of coach. Mike Leach did well. The offensive mind of Mike Leach. Dan Mullen, another guy who had offensive preference, if you will, or what's the word I'm looking for? A good offensive mind. Jeff Lebby supposedly has that as well. Type of coach that has been fairly successful at Mississippi State. We'll see whether that happens. He replaces the fired Zach Arnett. Congratulations to David Braun, by the way. The job he did at Northwestern this year, tremendous. Under those situations, he was hired to be the, I think, the defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. Took over the interim head coaching job when Pat Fitzgerald was fired during that scandal. Would have thought this team would possibly implode and maybe win one or two games. They go to a bowl game and have, I think, a 500 record in the Big Ten. Fran Brown, defensive backs coach at Georgia, hired to replace the fired Dino Babers. Listen, he brings a great culture. Hopefully, brings a great culture along with him to Syracuse. Syracuse has become a tough place to win. Moving to the ACC has not helped this team. The fall of the Big East has not helped Syracuse in football or in basketball. And I do want to get into some basketball, maybe for the last half hour, 20 minutes, whatever. Just talk a little bit of college basketball and start that transition. But hopefully Fran Brown can bring some of that Georgia culture to Syracuse. He's going to have a tough time. It's just tough to get 4-star, 5-star athletes up here in the Northeast. It's a tough job. Dino Babers is a good coach, good person, and I hope he lands on his feet somewhere. Trent Bray, the Oregon State defensive coordinator, gets elevated to take Jonathan Smith's spot. Listen, Oregon State's heading for, purgatory, really. Pac-12 is gone. They have not moved to a conference. They've scheduled 6, them and Washington State have scheduled 6 Mountain West games. They'll play each other. And then they've got to fill the games in with some other, I don't know where they're going to fill these games, and I really don't. They're hanging on to the Pac-12 name, still fighting legally not to pay these other teams as they desert Oregon State and Washington State, and I'm not going to revisit that, but I think, whatever. It's a pretty good coach. Maybe some continuity there, but DJ's probably leaving. He's entered the transfer portal, rumored to be going to Michigan State. I talked about Kirk Cignetti. I think it's a great hire. He did a great job at James Madison. Indiana's going to be a little tougher place to win. But again, a veteran guy, and if he can turn around, have some success, maybe this team. Tom Allen came in there and had some success, couldn't sustain it. Not enough offense. He's a defensive-minded guy. I like this hire a lot. This is one of the best hires, I think, of this hiring cycle in my mind. And he might have some success, maybe quickly, in the Big Ten. Not going to compete for championships, don't get me wrong, but that's not what success looks like at Indiana. We talked about Manny Diaz already. It's not a bad hire for Duke, but he'll be out the door the first time he gets an offer from a better school. San Diego State hires Sean Lewis, who was actually the coordinator who got demoted by Deion Sanders at Colorado. So we'll see this. Brady Hoke retired. San Diego State has a decent football program, not that good this year. Mountain West is better than you think. I'm ambivalent about this hire. I like Willie Fritz getting hired at Houston a lot. Willie Fritz gets a chance to coach in the Power Conference, albeit the realigned Big 12. Deserving coach, did a great job at Tulane. Before they lost the championship game, they had one loss. And they lost to a good SMU team, and they lost to a really good Ole Miss team without their quarterback. So a really good season, a couple of really good seasons for Willie Fritz, who did a great job overall at Tulane. I think this is a great hire for Houston, taking over for the fired Dana Holgerson. Spencer Danielson was the interim coach at Boise State. He gets the full-time job. He took over after Indy Avalos got fired and actually took Boise State to the Mountain West Championship after this team got off to a rather mediocre start. It's interesting that they fired Avalos. I'm still not sure what went on there, but continuity, and that's probably the best way for this team to go. Scotty Watkins leaves Austin Peay to go to where the hell is he going? Where the heck is he going? Isn't that interesting? I cannot figure out where the hell he's going here. You're building with enough talent. Walden is coming with Austin Peay. That's too bad. I hate when I can't read these. Can I hover over it and find out what that is? Can't do it. Oh, UTEP. All right, cool. Thank you. Don't you hate that, man? They make these damn logos so small. If it's not a really recognizable one, I can't tell the hell it is. Again, whatever. It's probably a good shot for a third tier guy to get a shot. Terry Bowden gets fired at Louisiana Monroe, and Brian Vincent, who was the next New Mexico offensive coordinator, was not a very good team. Again, I'm nothing to get excited about there if I'm Louisiana Monroe. Derek Mason, former Vanderbilt head coach, will take over at come on, you tell me what that is. Middle Tennessee. So not a big name, but a big name Derek Mason is. A little bit of success at Vanderbilt out of the gate, and then kind of whiffed after that. He replaces Rick Scottsdale. Bronco Mendenhall goes to New Mexico to replace Danny Gonzalez. Great hire for New Mexico. They need a total revamp. Danny Gonzalez was a disaster. This team has had a little bit of success previously. Bronco Mendenhall's had good success at BYU and at Virginia, and I think this is a really good hire for New Mexico. And a good spot, a good place for Bronco Mendenhall to go back to the region of the country where he had his most success, in my mind. Who else? So I'm going to move on because I don't really care about the rest of these. John Summerall from Troy does get the job that Willie Fritz gave up at Tulane. I think that's a really good hire. He's had a great run at Troy, and the Troy job stays open up until now, and so does the Nevada job. So we'll wait and see Some interesting guys who kept their jobs that were maybe on the bubble. Neil Brown keeps his job at West Virginia. Rhett Leahy keeps his job with SMU, not on the bubble, but he gets himself extended. Great job. Dave Aranda, who might have been a little bit of trouble, gets extended or retained, I should say, by Baylor. Gus Malzone gets extended at UCF. Tough year, their first year in a Big 12 this year. I would expect great things out of UCF going forward, though. Great facilities, good coach. Dan Lanning gets extended at Oregon. Jeff Monken gets extended at Army. Great job. Good game in the Army-Navy game last week. We talked about on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. Well-played game by Army. Again, what you expect. Not much going on for 3 quarters or so. Then the fourth quarter just becomes crazy. And Sam Pittman manages to keep his job at Arkansas. I'm going to see what other comments we got here. I was talking for a long time there. I apologize. What do you got here, John? You were a storm of controversy. I already had that. Oh, please. I trounced your emotionally fueled trail of tears for Forrest Stain. Michigan State is a 5-year project. Will the MSU boosters and brass be patient long enough? Good question. I mean, this is not going to be an immediate turnaround. That's why I'm not so sure DJ is going to follow Jonathan Smith to Lansing, East Lansing. It's going to be a tough sell, but it looks like he's going to move on. If the recruits don't commit before they see all that snow, then it's just not going to happen. I think you're probably talking about the Syracuse job. And by the way, while we don't get as much snow as we used to get here in the Albany area, Saratoga area, which is still upstate New York, out west they still get it because you get all the lake effect and whatnot. We don't get as much snow as we used to when I was a kid. I think we had 20 inches of snow last year. Good listen. Has been traveling whole time. What have you been doing? Where are you off to, CA? Great to have you with us again tonight. Let's look real quick. I want to look. Does anybody care about the bowl games? I mean, let's look at the bowl games that are being played before our next show, which I guess we got to go through next Saturday. So let's look real quick. The Myrtle Beach Bowl. That's a biggie. Georgia Southern and Ohio. Georgia Southern's a 3-point favorite. I'm going to take Ohio in this game since I got to pick these games. The Cricket Celebration Bowl, Howard against Florida A&M, both historically black colleges. I would take Howard in this game. There's no line in this game, but I'll pick Howard. Jacksonville State will play Louisiana. These are all Saturday games, by the way. In the RL Carriers New Orleans Bowl. I just love going through these names and shaking my head until I get a headache. Jacksonville State's a 3-point favorite. I'll take Jacksonville State in this game and lay the points. So far, not a game that I would bet. Miami, Ohio, and Appalachian State. Actually, an interesting matchup here in the Avocados from Mexico Cure Bowl. Not to be confused with the Avocados from anywhere else Cure Bowl. Appalachian State's a 6.5-point favorite. I may take the dog here. I might bet this game if it comes on the card that I can bet. I'll take the dog, Miami, in this game. Mexico State, surprisingly, beats Las Vegas in the Mountain West Championship. No, that wasn't the Mountain West Championship. That was they lost their championship game, to Liberty. But they beat Auburn and the week before the Iron Bowl. They'll play Fresno State in the Asleta, New Mexico Bowl. Does anybody care? Fresno State, UCLA and Boise State, and the Starco Brands LA Bowl. Again, who cares? I'll take Boise State only because they've been on a good run. Their coach gets an extension. California and Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a 3-point favorite. This is the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. At least it's a bowl I remember, the Independence Bowl. I'll take Texas Tech in this game. Very disappointing season by Texas Tech. They're a 3-point favorite. Doubtful I got more than maybe one wager in that group. On Monday, you got Western Kentucky against Old Dominion in the famous Toastery Bowl. We all remember that one when we were kids, don't we? I'll take Old Dominion -2.5. Game I'm interested in because I like UTSA, Texas San Antonio. I love Jeff Traylor to coach. 8-4 this year. Good year, their first year in the American Conference. They're a 13-point favorite here. I'll take them. Next Thursday, December 21st, we've got the Roof Cam Boca Raton Bowl. Syracuse gets in, bowl eligible, their last game, winning under their interim coach. Syracuse is 3. I'll take Syracuse just as a hometown favorite. How's that? Or near hometown favorite. Friday, Georgia Tech. This last game we'll pick because we're moving on to college basketball, and we'll do the rest next Saturday. UCF. Gus Malzone just gets extended, as we said, gets Georgia Tech. UCF is a 4.5-point favorite. This is the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. I'll take UCF. We'll do some more of those picks next Saturday. I know they're exciting as all get out. So I'm a degenerate gambler who needs to consider rehab if you're gambling on these first week bowl games. I gave you one pick. I'm giving you picks. We do have people that care. I do like the one game I told you, and I'm not a degenerate gambler. I'm a very smart gambler. And I've had a great year on college football this year, by the way. The pros have brought me down a little bit. The Miami Appalachian State game is the only game I will bet, and I will be taking the 6.5 points. I think that line could change a whole lot. So you're not wrong, John. If you're betting any of these games, probably if you're watching any of these games, it's probably crazy. Old Dominion, aren't they a trucking company? And when did they start playing football? Actually, 2 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. They actually had a couple of really good years, similar to James Madison. Their success these last couple of years. Their first couple of years, they were not eligible to play in the conference championships or get a bowl game, and they had very, very good years. A little bit less so this year, as they were only 500. The Bahama Bowl will be played. Has it been played in Charlotte? Is that true? Now you're gonna make me look forward to find it. Oh God, let's see if I can find them here. Birmingham Bowl. Where is a famous? Can't find it, John. Yeah, we'll probably come across it next week. It's very interesting. If it's being played in Charlotte, that's just too much. We'll start to get into some better games to pick next Saturday, but let's switch gears a little bit. And John, I do believe you follow us when we talk about college basketball, and I want to talk a little about college basketball, where we are in the season, as we're going to start getting into league play pretty soon. There's been some interesting developments, some surprises. James Madison doing very, very well. Colorado State doing very, very well in their out-of-conference schedule, ranked higher than they've ever been ranked before. James Madison seeing success I haven't seen since Lefty Driesell coached there when I was a baby. But at the top of the rankings, not a lot of surprises. Arizona, with all but one of the first-place votes in this week's poll, 8-0. Kansas follows closely behind at 9-1, Purdue 9-1, and Houston with the other first place vote. Kelvin Sampson does a great job year in, year out at Houston. UConn, the defending champions, are at 5. Baylor at 9-0. Marquette 8-2 under Shaka Smart after that great run last year. I think Shaka Smart and Marquette compete for the national championship this year. Just saying. Let me change my banner, by the way, so people know I'm talking about basketball when they tune in. Let me see if I can find one that talks about basketball. No. Yeah, we swing around college basketball. That's good. Creighton at 8-1. So the Big East well represented here. Gonzaga 7-2. North Carolina 7-2. Round out the top 10 on the AP side of it anyway. Oklahoma with a great start, bit of a surprise. Tennessee 6-3, not a great start for them, still hanging in there at 12 somehow. Clemson does this every year. 9-0, they get ranked. ACC play will start, they'll fall backwards. Kentucky rebounding a bit after a couple of down years under John Calipari. 7-2 to start the season anyway. Last year's surprise Florida Atlantic is 7-2 and at number 15. Illinois 7-2. Colorado State, as I said, just lost. They had their highest ranking at number 13. They fell 4 slots to 17 this week. They're now 9-1, still off to a great start. BYU at 8-1, their best start since the Jimmer Fredette days. Good job for them. They also are down this week, though, after losing their first game. Texas loses a couple games this week and drops 7 spots. James Madison gets away 9-0. Somehow they dropped 2 spots this week. I'm not sure how that happens. Duke, very uneven start. John Shire's second year, 6-3. We'll see what happens when conference play gets started here soon. Virginia 8-1. Just got back into the top 25. Tony Bennett's had a couple of mediocre years, not great seasons from Virginia's standpoint. Wisconsin at 7-3. Miami drops 9 spots after a couple of losses this week, and Northwestern in the top 25 at 25. Falling out this week, Texas A&M and Buzz Peterson and San Diego State. Some interesting story. We've got Juwan Howard at Michigan in trouble again for supposedly getting into a fight with a strength and conditioning coach, I believe out of Michigan, or maybe he was even an independent contractor. I'm not sure. He's on a zero tolerance warning, for lack of a better term, because of the altercation that he had last year during a handshake line at the end of a game with an opposing coach. So we'll see how that plays out. What else is going on around the leagues? Anything you guys want to talk about, either football or basketball? I just want to get into a little bit of basketball here. I think the biggest surprises so far, again, I got a couple of things here. I got some fun facts here for a couple of things. The biggest disappointment so far this year, I said Duke off to a bad start. Michigan State, who was ranked first, has fallen all the way out of the top 25, only off to a 4-4 start, 1-3 against teams in the top 300. Not a great start. I would expect Coach Izzo to get this straightened out and return to form before it's over. I mentioned Duke already. Maryland, who was expected to have a decent year in the Big Ten, has gotten off to a very poor start. And they've had blowout defeats against Indiana and Villanova already. And Villanova is also a team that's not off to a great start either. So they're one of the big surprises in a bad way. St. Mary's also off to a bad start after really pushing Gonzaga the last couple of years out there in the West Coast, Western, what do we call that? The West Coast Conference, I think. Villanova, again, also off to a very middling start to be some of the teams that we might be concerned about this early in the season. Teams off to a surprising start. I think we already talked about most of them up until this point. Let me see, we got a comment here I did not pick up. John DeLon is still here. Apparently the stadium in the Bahamas is undergoing renovations and won't be ready in time. All right, well, that's cool. So why do we have one? Why do we have a Bahama Bowl anyway? Oh, God, it gets so freaking frustrating with all these bowl games. Makes me just want to barf sometimes, doesn't it? You got to agree with me there, John. I mean, too many bowl games. I want to get into some coaches. Some stories. I did have these are my disappointments, my fun numbers. I don't know. I guess I lost my surprises. Let me go through some fun numbers here. Number one. Kansas came into the month at the top of the rankings, and Purdue leaves it that way. The Boilermakers are number one for the third consecutive season, entering December. And you know how many other Big Ten teams have ever done that? None. They've also won 37 or 31 consecutive non-conference games in a regular season. 3, Marquette's, I'm not going to do this because these numbers are dated. It goes back to this. Man, this has changed so much. I don't even want to read that. How about storylines? How about Rick Pitino? To me, the biggest story in college basketball this year, to me, is Rick Pitino getting back into the big time, if you will. He gets back into a power conference in the Big East at a St. John's program that's been down for decades, really. Great history at St. John's under Joe Lapchick and then Louis Carnesecca. Still had some good seasons under his head coach, Brian Mahoney, and then Fran Fischella. Ron Jarvis had some great teams there. Made it to an Elite Eight. But since then, nothing. And all of those teams, Jarvis's teams, Fischilla's teams, problems with the NCAA violations. They bring in a risky hire in the sense that his reputation has been tarnished through the years in Rick Pitino, but it's hard to argue with Rick Pitino, the coach. Rick Pitino has coached and turnaround programs at Boston, at Providence, at Kentucky, at Louisville, at Iona. I think I'm missing somebody. Not to mention the Knicks. And you don't have to look at where those programs go when he's gone. Kentucky continued to win when Tubby Smith got there, but it was basically Rick Pitino's program that he won with and his players. Louisville fell on hard times after Pitino left. And they're really hard now. Kenny Payne's in probably one of the hottest seats in the country. So I think Rick Pitino is one of the biggest stories of this coming year. As far as maybe potential teams to bounce back. We talked about Villanova, but they're off to a bad start. Ohio State, they added a couple of really good recruits to a mix that was to a veteran mix. It's going to be interesting if they can get themselves back near the top of the pack, or the Big Ten, excuse me. And this would be the year to do it before they get joined by those teams from the Pac-12. The Big Ten is going to be a monster in college basketball once UCLA, USC. Again, these are programs that have had great history. Not always great. Oregon's always had some good teams. Washington's had some good teams. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the Big Ten or the Big 100, whatever it ends up being. Whether Dayton can bounce back is a big story. Oregon, they did retain their head coach, and after an up and down season last year, we'll see if they can bounce back. Colorado, Syracuse under Adrian Autry, again, not off to a great start, but Jim Boeheim, the program had regressed under Jim Boeheim, and Jim Boeheim could not recruit anymore. Again, I said moving to the ACC was the worst thing that happened to Syracuse. Not being in the Big East, not competing with the Georgetowns, the St. John's hurts. It just hurts the program and the interest in the program, and the recruiting is tough. Joe Girard came out of Glens Falls here, not 20 miles from where I live. Great high school player, probably a good player on a good college basketball team off the bench. But when he's your star, when him and Buddy Boeheim are your stars, you've done a bad job of recruiting, and Autry's going to have a tough time restoring the luster to this program. And it's got a good history. Jim Boeheim won a national championship at Syracuse, got to 4 or 5 Final Fours, 2 finals, a national championship, as I said. And if you think that's easy to do at Syracuse, you're not paying attention. Great job out of Jim Boeheim. Because most fans might actually travel to the Bahamas. There's nobody there. That's the problem with all these bowl games, John. There's nobody there. It's just right? I mean, gosh, who wants to watch these games? Oh, God. What games do we got coming up this week that are exciting in college basketball? We're going to start. Are you serious? Log me out. Saturday, we get Ohio State 8-2 against UCLA, off to a bit of a stumbling start at 5-3. Baylor 9-0 will play Michigan State Saturday on Fox. Again, Michigan State off to a poor start. This would be a good place for Michigan State and Coach Izzo to start turning it around. Alabama against Creighton. Alabama 6-3. We'll see whether they can turn it around here. Alabama, I like a lot. I like Coach Oates. A lot of the stuff that's gone on there has not been his fault. You can say that, the coach is responsible for the players' actions and whatnot. He's done a great job at Alabama, and I'm looking forward to this team. I think this team will get better and better as the year goes on, similar to the football team. Clemson at Memphis. That's Saturday at 3 p.m. Virginia will play Memphis on December 19th. So a couple of big games for Memphis coming up here. This got to be a tournament, I'm assuming. No, it's not. Penny Hardaway, this is a make or break year for him. He's been very up and down. He made a tournament last year, barely snuck in off the bubble. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Marquette will go to Providence on December 19th as well. Providence 8-2. Ed Cooley, their coach, who had done a great job rebuilding this program, turning it into a power in the East. Really, the last decade, I think. Marquette, Shaka Smart restored some of their luster the last two seasons, and last year was a really good season for that team. I like Marquette. I've been a Marquette fan since I was a kid. I'll continue to root for them. When Al McGuire won in 1977, I was 17 years old, and I thought, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Texas A&M will play Houston, and Kelvin Sampson is one of the most underrated coaches in college basketball. Does a great job year in and year out with that Kansas team. Some other great games coming up in the coming week. Kansas against Indiana, North Carolina and Kentucky, UConn and Gonzaga. So all these teams still getting warmed up. And number 1, Arizona, and number 3, Purdue will happen this Saturday. Unfortunately, on Peacock, and I will not pay for Peacock. So that's some of the great games coming up in college basketball. Pitino's bagman advantage is now negated by the NIL. You won't see Bourbon Myers returning to college ball for the same reason. Urban Myers. Again, I'm not going to say that the disparaging comments about both these coaches are warranted, but I think they're both great coaches as well. Again, I don't think the only reason those teams won, and you're thinking of Louisville and maybe even Kentucky when it comes to Rick Pitino, but he didn't have his bag men at Providence. He was just a great coach. It took them to the Final Four with Billy Donovan as your best player, playing against Vegas, playing against Syracuse, playing against Indiana, with athletes that are much better. And he competed. Great job at Providence. At BU, again, playing in the NEC, but still turned a program that was nowhere into something. So this guy built himself up. He's a great coach. All the other stuff is fair and warranted. I don't think it takes away from his coaching acumen. Did a great job at Iona. I know he had a lot of kids from overseas again and whatever. I mean, this is a team that probably should have won their first round game here in Albany this past year. It was a tough loss. They led and had a big lead in the first half. And just lost their way in the second half. But Rick Pitino is a really good coach, and it's probably a warranted comment, though. All in all, right? Real quickly, some coaches that may need to kind of watch their back as we get ready to head into tournament play. Where's my notes here? Mike Davis at Detroit Mercy. Mike Davis, you might remember from Indiana, actually winning a national championship over Marquette when he took over for Bob Knight. But his star shone bright and burned fast. And he has had a hard time repeating any of that early success, if you will. Gerard Haas at Stanford. Stanford's been a wasteland since Mike Montgomery was out there and did a great job back in I want to say the 90s was the last time probably this team was really relevant. They do get NIT berths, but when you got 68 teams going to the NCAA tournament, getting an NIT berth, there's really nothing to brag about. So they're struggling along. Kenny Payne at Louisville, just an atrocious year last year, finishing 4-28, 2-18 in the Big East. He has got to have a better year this year if he's going to get off this hot seat. Wayne Tinkle at Oregon State is another guy in trouble. Serious trouble. These are the guys that are in the most trouble. Their seats are probably a little bit warmer. No relation because there's an S on his name. Jim Engels at Columbia. Nobody cares. Geno Ford at Stony Brook. Steve Henson at UTSA. Mike Hopkins at Washington. Once one of the highest regarded. We only got 4 minutes to go. Highest regarded. I can say this. Highest regarded assistants in the country. At one point, he was the heir apparent to Jim Boeheim. Got tired of waiting because they didn't push Boeheim out the first time they tried to. The second time they succeeded, he got tired of waiting, went to Washington. He struggled and missed the NCAA tournament in the last 3 seasons, I believe. Going to get tough for him. Justin Houston at Fresno State, Ben Johnson at Minnesota, Dwayne Killings at Albany here in Albany. Had a great run under Will Brown. Why they fired Will Brown is beyond me. Had a great run. Went to NCAA tournaments several times, competed when he was there. Dwayne Killings has been a mess. He was a top assistant at Marquette, had a run-in with a player last season, was charged with assault. Still, the case hasn't been resolved. Shocked he kept his job, but he's in a bit of trouble. Mark Schlesinger at New Orleans, John Smith at Cal Poly, Tony Stubblefield at DePaul, and Reggie Weatherspoon at Canisius. All guys in big trouble. And guys who ought to probably just, again, keep their eyes open. Jeff Capel, who I talked about, he had a good run at Pittsburgh last year, but don't stumble this year. Johnny Dawkins at UCF. Johnny Dawkins has just never got it together. There's a lot of people thought he'd be the coach at Duke at one point. Never worked out. Never going to be the coach at Duke with the record he had at Stanford and now UCF. Chris Holtman at Ohio State, we mentioned before, he needs a big rebound. He brought in some big name transfers. We'll see whether he can turn things around and get back towards the top of the Big Ten. Jeff Jones at Old Dominion, a former Virginia star. Kevin Kruger at UNLV, who is a son of Lon Kruger. And that's really the list I'm going to worry about. Cliff Ellis just retired, by the way. I'll give him a shout out. He retired as the winningest active coach in the NCAA. Had some great years at Clemson, at Auburn, and then Coastal Carolina before calling it a career. And Lorenzo Romar had a great run at Purdue. Maybe time for him to remove himself as well. And we'll get into more college basketball as the season starts to progress. But I wanted to just tip things off with a little bit of a primer here tonight after we talk some college football. Next week, again, we won't be here on Wednesday night, so don't look at for us, John. If you can make it 9 a.m. Eastern time, Saturday, next Saturday, not this Saturday. This will be a repeat of this show. But the following Saturday, I can't do the math on what the date is. I guess it's the 23rd because it's the day before Christmas Eve. Join us at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll do the show live. You can catch us Friday with the Are You Serious show with the Mad New Yorker. We'll do the Major League Update on Friday afternoon, and the Sunday Stream of Consciousness at 8:30 a.m. Sunday. Join us for those, and you can catch us on Mac and Jack Friday and Sunday mornings. Guys, have a great weekend. John, thanks for carrying the show today. I love it. Bye.